Alright, recording audio in a new room. Let's see how bad the acoustics sound. I had a rough night recently and needed some cinematic junk food. I'd already watched Avatar: The Last Airbender all the way through twice since it hit Netflix, so that was out. So I watched Birds of Prey again. Now, when I think of the DC Extended Universe, I think of a very inconsistent and wildly random group of movies that are barely connected, except for the cast and a winking nudge that says these are technically all in the same universe. You know, at least with the Marvel movies, there's a baseline level of control. Every movie, with some exceptions, is aiming for an exact center, 6.5 out of 10, and offensive to most mainstream audiences to the point of being inconsequential, meant to be consumed once or twice and then tossed away casually, the cinematic equivalent of a trip to Olive Garden. The DC movies, though, I keep watching them because they're so much more interesting. I think Warner has finally decided that they're the Pepsi in this game and therefore are allowed to go swinging wildly for the fences, occasionally smacking themselves in the face with a bat, sometimes getting a solid double, and other times producing movies that are probably better than most, if not all, of the Marvel movies. Yeah, I'd say I enjoyed Shazam and Birds of Prey a lot more than I liked all except my personal top 5 of Marvel movies. I'd watch Birds of Prey any day over Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, the first 2 Thors, you get the point. What's weird is that the critical response to Birds of Prey seems centered around Margot Robbie's incredible performance in the cinematography and production design. Both of these elements are important to the success of the film, but I think there's more going on under the hood. But more importantly, I think dismissing Birds of Prey as disposable popcorn entertainment does both this movie and the people that made it a serious disservice. I think it's tough to describe Harley Quinn's place in the DC universe. She's both incredibly popular as a character in her own right, but is also very much tied into the brand that she came from. She originally started as a random henchman for the Joker in the Batman animated series, but her role slowly grew into kind of a sidekick for the Joker in general. We learn her origin story in an episode of the new Batman Adventures, which as far as I can tell introduces the main conceit of her character. She's in an abusive relationship with the Joker. This is not a new take. It's obvious. People write think pieces about it. Though the further we get from Harley as a secondary villain that's part of the package when you make a Joker story, the more of an identity I feel like she gets on her own. The comic book series and her solo animated series on DC Universe are good examples of this. The conceit of both is Harley striking out on her own and fighting to become a respected supervillain. The Joker and other supervillains are still involved pretty heavily in her stories, but especially in the first season of the animated series where they literally make mention of a glass ceiling for female superheroes. Again, this is not new. Captain Marvel did the same thing, albeit with zero self-awareness, and the laughability of using the same clip of her standing up like 3 times in the movie. See, she's empowered and stuff, and she doesn't have to fight the dude at the end who controlled her. Yay. Yeah, I know, throwing shade at the Marvel while defending a movie with a similar surface-level themes, whatever, send your hate mail to the usual address. Birds of Prey, however, I feel like takes a slightly different angle. Instead of the story being externally, can Harley legitimize herself as a villain, with her obstacles being an establishment of villains and her ex-boyfriend, the story is an internal one, and that questions whether Harley can be better than the Joker and the environment that created her. We've barely met this universe's Joker. He doesn't appear in Birds of Prey except for a blink and you'll miss it cameo by some guy dressed as Jared Leto. But from the opening scenes of Birds of Prey, we learn that Joker and Harley have broken up multiple times and that she's protected as long as he's around. And she's internalized this. Remember the scene from the middle, which is a flashback to when she got shit-faced at Blast Mask Club in the first place.
Know where the Harley Quinn is? Janky ass clown with bad eye makeup? Ooh. Ouch. A Harley Quinn's role is to serve the audience, a master. You know, Harley Quinn's nothing without a master. And no one gives 2 fucks who we are beyond that.
I mean, it's blunt, but if you're reading it that Harley needs to break free from Joker's influence, that's the theme of the movie. Harley is meant to serve Joker, and she has to learn to be her own person. Except that that's only half of what's going on. Joker abuses and alienates people around him. In most incarnations of the Joker, he routinely kills people without thinking, thinks only of himself, bullies people close to him, like Harley, into following his lead. In Birds of Prey, Harley doesn't hurt her friends when she catches them talking behind her back. She doesn't gut Cassandra Cain when she learns she ate the diamond. And she doesn't just kill everyone and turn Cassandra over to Black Mask at the end of the movie. She doesn't have to beat the Joker. The Joker himself takes no actions in the movie, but she does have to beat her internalized sense of self-worth. And all that makes it worse for me when people gloss over Birds of Prey as disposable, because I don't think it is. I mentioned the Marvel movies up front because I think they're part of the problem, and I think part of the resurgence of a divide between art cinema and mass market cinema. Simply put, I don't think there needs to be a divide. Marvel and Disney have created a media empire so massive they could release theoretically anything that they wanted and it could make money. I mean, seriously. They put out a movie that I can only guess was J.J. Abrams saying, hey, Stephen King wrote It while on mountains of coke, so maybe that's the secret. And then sending the result to Disney. Side note, why the fuck would you let one of the writers from Batman v Superman out of writer jail, Disney? Far as I'm concerned, Terrio and Goyer should be charged with war crimes for their sins against cinema. When I saw The Last Jedi and Thor Ragnarok in theaters for the first time, I thought they'd figured it out. Give promising young directors the keys to their biggest franchises, and the allowance to use them to tell interesting stories that make an impact and make people think and stick with you after viewing. The endless Disney production empire could be used to make great movies. And it has produced great movies. Like I showed earlier, I would seriously put Ragnarok, Guardians, and Winter Soldier up there with the likes of RoboCop, Terminator, the original Star Wars trilogy, The Matrix, Starship Troopers, John Wick. These are great movies that blend thoughtful topics and themes of the characters that are immortalized in our collective cultural memory with kick-ass action and fun science fiction topics. I seriously think this is one for the books as a great genre movie that manages to elevate this kind of material. And to bring back the opening of this video, DC and Warner Brothers are better at making these types of movies because they just haven't established their brand yet. They're struggling to find an identity. And they need to learn that there's a market for off-brand superhero movies, and movies that try, and movies that swing for the fences, and movies that aren't just Captain Marvel again.